This interview is brought to you by people just like you. This first launch on Patreon and to YouTube members, so a big thanks to them for backing. If you would like to do so, you can go to patreon.com/SafeStatePlus or become a member here on YouTube. Welcome to yet another episode of Save State Plus. This time I have the pleasure of Bucky, the director and publishing manager, the communications director and publishing manager over at Pocketpair, handling Palworld and some other exciting things. Bucky, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's good to see you too, Destin.
It is great to see you. You know, I've been following Pocketpair since Palworld, like many people. There have been some other games developed at the company. When did you join the team? Why don't you tell people a little bit about how you got involved with everything?
Sure. I got involved with Pocketpair before the release of Craftopia, which was the company's previous title. And I joined just as kind of a general bit of LQA, bit of community stuff. And then eventually I ended up taking over basically all the community stuff.
So back then, I bet it was like a lot of snacks at the office, you know, all expenses paid lunches, very fancy things. What was it like in those early days?
It was very small, very basic. The company's office was kind of inside a rental space with like 8 other little companies in the center of Tokyo. But most people were remote like me. I basically never went to the office back in those times. It was very quiet, very relaxed, very kind of boyish atmosphere back then. It was just a lot of having fun, goofing around, and making games.
And now it's serious business all the time.
Now it's, I don't know, quadruple A. I don't know what they call it these days, but yes, big business right now.
That's cool. Getting into the business aspects of it, when Palworld was being developed, do you have any idea, like, what were the hopes for it at launch? Was it just like, let's just make this silly game? Or was it, no, we want to make this a big franchise and have it become a huge success for us and attract a lot of attention?
Yeah. No. Look, we've had a very dedicated fan base for a very long time, all the way back to Over Dungeon 8-9 years ago, the first game by Pocketpair. We've basically operated the exact same way since day one. And when the first Palworld trailer came out, which was, now 3 or 4 years ago, it had that same reaction. And then, of course, it got a bit quiet as we were developing it. We knew, based on the reaction, the attention, that it was going to do very well at launch. But, of course, nobody had any inclination it would be, 25 plus million, there's no way to predict that type of thing.
I imagine not. What was the reaction like in office? So you hit your target and then you just blow past it. It's like, how did that go from, okay, we're doing pretty good to, what?
Yeah. Shock, panic, despair, worry. It was a very, very, very crazy. Those first few days in particular were just, it's still hard to kind of wrap our head around it. There's a thread on our Slack somewhere where people are posting the numbers like every 5 minutes. And everyone is just saying, this is where it stops. This is where it stops. This is where it stops. And I think it was, when we hit around 1.5 million concurrent or something, that's when the panic really started to kind of set in.
So you had this big success back when it launched, and now you're only doing like 100 concurrents a day, like 100 peak users on Steam. So what are you doing now that the game's dead and nobody, as the internet would say?
Now Palworld's dead and we can move on. No. We're obviously very busy. We're trying to kind of fix the issues that Palworld has. There's a lot of kind of mechanical things that players want, like crossplay and server transfer, these kind of things. So the plan for this year is to kind of get all those kind of more major technical parts of the game finished and then start kind of going towards 1.0. That's, all attention's on 1.0 right now. So
the big announcement beyond Palworld is that you're starting a publishing company. How did that come to be? Was that planned before Palworld's success or?
No. You could almost say this is Palworld's fault, to be honest. days, hours within the launch of Palworld, we started getting emails from really like everyone. We started getting emails from like investor companies and venture capitals. And then as the weeks went on, game companies started emailing us, and indies and hobby devs and, like big AAA company, names that I think would kind of surprise a lot of people, just started flooding us with emails early January, February last year. And it was all the same. We took all these meetings and people were like, hey, basically we need money. And we talked about it for months and months, and we kind of weighed up, what could we do realistically? What help could we provide people who are maybe struggling? So we kind of put down a framework of what we want Pocketpair Publishing to be. We started talking to people privately as early as July of last year. Started making deals, signing contracts, and now we're finally ready to kind of publicly reveal this new division.
And refresh my memory, what was the first game you revealed?
We're working on a horror game with Surgent Studios.
And how's that looking? How's that relationship going?
I can't really say much about the game itself, but we're happy. We're happy with how things are going. They're really, really, really nice people, and we're really glad that we can kind of help them out and help them make this new project.
With success, you were able to launch a publishing company, but with that initial big wave of people expressing interest in Palworld, a lot of scrutiny came with it also. What was the reaction to the 3D model comparisons and the likenesses that you can talk about?
I mean, I can look, we've talked about this a little bit, but maybe not as much as people expected. First and foremost, we're a Japanese company. 95% of the staff is Japanese. So we're kind of insular. Japan's a very insular games world. It's not really that connected to the outside games world. So look, Palworld popped off. All these accusations came in. The models are stolen. The models are ripped. It's all AI generated. I don't know. I can't even think of them. Realistically, people want to say these things because it gets them views. Cool beans. The reality, doesn't really get affected by Twitter views. So we said very early on, no, obviously not true. That's all we really need to say. We can fight people all we want, but, it's no benefit to us. So we don't really care at this point, right?
But for real, was it ChatGPT or which one did you go with?
I'm afraid to say it was human hands.
Oh my.
And whether people want to believe that or not at this point is up to them, right?
Yeah. Can you actually, in all seriousness, talk about how they came up with the designs? What was that process like? I heard USB sticks were being passed around or something at one point.
That's very early Palworld. That was around when we switched from Unity to Unreal. But PAL Designs, it's a pretty simple format. So we have a couple of in-house PAL concept artists, and they basically just doodle PALs, like really, really basic all day. And then our project manager and director kind of goes through those doodles, and they choose the ones that they think could become something special. Those get drawn out, fleshed out, colored, and then we have a channel on our Slack that the entire company, whether they're Palworld or not, can see, and we all vote. Basically, they post the art, and we vote. I like this design. I don't like this design. I like it, but I want something to change. And then, the PALs with the most votes get modeled and rendered, and the PALs that don't go to the graveyard of PAL designs.
What's one of your favorites that went to the graveyard? Can you tease us with something?
Please. I argue about this all the time. And I know if I say it now, the community is going to start getting angry about it, but maybe it's the best way to pressure my CEO. There was a PAL that was like a shark with like a little creature inside the shark's mouth. Mm-hmm. And the whole concept of the PAL was the PAL is the inside bit, not the outside bit. And Matt, this was contested for weeks. It went back and forth and people said no and yes. And in the end, it just kind of got scrapped for something else. But I hope it comes back because it was pretty cute.
I like that. I like that a lot. A little bit of a misdirection with the little guy in the mouth. what was your favorite one that did make it into the game?
Kurojiro the frog. I was a big supporter since day one. My profile picture has been a frog for like 8 or 9 years. I was sad he didn't make it to the initial release, but he made it for the summer update, so I was pretty happy.
That's cool. What do you think out of all the things? So, like, obviously there was organic interest, but can you think of one thing that gave your game the biggest bump in terms of player count or interest? Like, was there something that happened and you're like, okay, that brought it to a new level?
Yeah. It's difficult. We talk about this a lot. Because, to be very like pragmatic and logical, if we could figure out how to do that again, we would apply that to every game forever. For me personally, I think it was the combination of all the streamers jumping in. We did a pre-release for streamers that had quite a bit of interest, but nothing too amazing. And about 24 hours before release, suddenly everyone's jumping in. Like, so the biggest names are contacting us. I want a key. I think that really helped kind of drive the initial spike. I also think it's just a kind of game that it doesn't really get released on PC very often. And I think it was just before release when kind of the more general Steam user picked up on it. Steam gave us a banner and stuff for the launch, which was really cool of them. And I think all of these things just resulted in a lot of people, jumping in. It's also quite cheap. It's not an expensive game. So I think that kind of helped us.
Do you think there's something about just how the game is overall designed, or because it's fairly simple. Like, you do crafting and then you get the pals and you enslave them to do your bidding. and that was sort of like an edgy sort of fun mechanic. But do you think there's something about the overall game design concept that was easy to get into that helped people get on board, or anything in that respect?
Yeah, I mean, Palworld is deceptively complex. I think it looks very difficult, but it's really not. Like you said, it's a lot more simple to play. The end game of Palworld is quite difficult, and there's very few people who kind of get to that level, but it's quite fleshed out. I think a lot of people give Palworld a hard time because of maybe how it looks graphically, but there's a lot to it. There's a lot of meat to that game. People can sink some serious hours into it. Palworld had one of the highest per average played of any game on Steam last year. Which kind of that blew our mind more than most stats. It's a game that people just really like to play. They like to put time into, and all we can be is happy about how that turned out.
There's an old poker saying, I think it's easy to learn, hard to master.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
For Palworld, maybe easy to learn, hard to grind. But yeah.
That makes sense. Do you think the controversy helped at all? Because obviously there was controversy all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely drove attention, but I think it's difficult to say whether it helped or hindered ultimately. Palworld had so much attention on social media and Steam and YouTube and all kinds of things on both sides of the fence, but there's no way to really quantify whether that resulted in players or even sales, right? I'm not sure. It's a really complex question. I think there were times when it did maybe help us, and I think there were times where it ultimately hurt us. I guess it really depended on which of the allegations were louder at any given time.
Yeah. Well, I'll play a game if it's controversial, or if it's not. Like, if I'm organically interested, I'll check it out. If there's controversy, I'm like, well, I want to see for myself. Is it really whatever they're saying? And then I'm like, oh, this is fun.
I mean, I feel like I could rant about it for hours, even though no one wants to. But, realistically, a lot of that controversy was very kind of like fabricated. Some of it was kind of grounded in kind of weak evidence, and some of it was just totally, it was just cooked up out of thin air. Because there was like a week there where you just tweet the word Palworld and it was like 5 million views, right? It was too attractive not to kind of jump on, right? You had politicians and sports stars and all the craziest people were tweeting it just because it was kind of generating these views. So, did that help us? I don't know. Did it just annoy people on Twitter? Probably. But such is the life of Twitter, I guess.
For sure. I hear that all the time. Everybody has their take, myself included, to be fair. But yeah, I am curious. Can you share it all, or have you ever publicly shared what the budget was for Palworld at launch?
I don't think. I need to be careful now. I don't know if it's been publicly said. There are many numbers out there, none of which I believe we ever said. I unfortunately I would need to double check that. I don't know if anyone's ever said it. It's not a huge number. It's definitely much, much cheaper than you might think. But it's not, I think someone said one of the most popular ones was like $10,000 at one point, which is nonsense. It did not cost $10,000 to make Palworld. It was more than that.
Was it less than $150 million?
It was less than $150 million. Yes. Okay. Yes. Just a bit less than $150 million.
A bit. A bit or a little bit more than a bit.
You could fit several Palworlds.
So when's Palworld 2 coming out?
Palworld 2. 100% of Palworld resources are currently on Palworld 1.0.
Oh.
There isn't even a whisper of Palworld 2 in this office at the moment.
Speaking about the other side of it, obviously, I went independent. You have, Kind of Funny sprung up. They're 10 years old now, and you have other places. I believe Colin's thing is about to celebrate 7 years. That's Last Stand Media. There's Twitch influencers that have massive audiences. How do you see the media landscape shifting in the future?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. We don't have a great relationship with games media in general. I think a lot of gamers are getting a bit tired of kind of the constant bait and the kind of constant attention grabbing that's been going on over the last few years. And more, I think gamers and even companies like us kind of look to the more independent or the kind of YouTube groups for their media. I think going forward, we're going to see a lot more independence pop up. I think we're going to see a lot more independent interviewing pop up. And, as cynical as it might sound, I do think we're going to see a real decline in kind of legacy gaming media, unless there's some, dramatic change. But I don't see it happening. So
yeah, I mean, we'll have to see what happens. It's definitely interesting. I definitely find myself tuning in to individual streamers more and more often. Yeah. And, I still watch, obviously I worked at IGN for 13 years. I still check out IGN pretty regularly to see what's going on there. But I am curious, for your needs, where did you find the biggest impact? Did you find it from the media attention or from some Twitch streamer playing your game live on stream? Or is it a mixed bag? There's not really a wrong or right answer here. I'm just curious.
Yeah, definitely a mixed bag. There's a couple of notable streamers who blew the game up. A couple of videos on sites like Bilibili and stuff that really blew up the game's attention. And there were a couple of media articles, I don't want to put anyone on blast, so I'll leave out the name of the publication, but a certain publication made a very scathing Palworld review a day after it released. And that article alone absolutely went everywhere. So even though the article itself was negative, it drove a lot of attention to the game. So a bit of a mixed bag, really.
Okay. Do you think that in the future... Well, I accidentally jumped to a wrong question, so I'll just go to it now. Sure. Do you think the team would ever revisit any of your older games like Craftopia?
Yeah, Craftopia is still in active development. I'm sorry, Twitter. I know you like to believe otherwise, but it's very much still in active development. Craftopia is chugging along just fine. It's a very, very small team. It's a very, very passionate team. They don't want to work on anything else. So they are just still kind of working on that. It will reach 1.0 when they feel ready to kind of wrap it up. Our other games, Over Dungeon was kind of finished for the longest time, and then we kind of spun it back up to make the Switch version a couple of months ago. It released this month or last month now, but I don't know if we'll add more content to it in future, but we'll see. Most of these are like passion projects for certain people in the office, so if they want to do more on it, they can always do that.
That's kind of crazy to think about. Has your staff increased a lot since Palworld blew up?
Probably not as much as people think it has.
300 staff.
No, not even close. Our CEO would hate that many people. No. We are about 65-ish now. And we were maybe 50 when Palworld launched. So it's not a huge expansion.
I personally like that. I like smaller teams. I do feel like you can kind of have, for lack of a better term, a cohesive vision about what you want to accomplish, and you can communicate pretty regularly with about that amount of people. When you start to get 100 and more, then it gets a little more tricky, in my opinion, in my experience.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. Speaking of Twitter, you brought it up earlier. Do you think just what happens on Twitter or Blue Sky or any of the social media platforms, do you think it's taken a little bit too seriously or not seriously enough?
I don't really think the answer is either. Twitter is kind of an odd one. I think Blue Sky, I don't really have any opinion about Blue Sky because it's still quite small and doesn't really have any impact, right? Realistically speaking. But Twitter is kind of a weird one. I think a lot of people on Twitter have convinced themselves that is the gaming world. I think a lot of people forget that gaming discourse online in general, no matter where it is, Discord, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, no matter where people are talking, it's still an overwhelming minority of gamers overall, right? Mm-hmm. So I think people kind of get easily kind of fall into this trap of, 1 million views on this post, 100,000 likes, this is the voice of gamers. And it's certainly a loud voice, but I wouldn't call it kind of the voice of gamers. I think some companies take it very seriously, kind of discourse on Twitter. We're a bit more hands off. We see the posts and we go, that's wacky, but we never really kind of get engaged into it. I think personally we would be more worried if like our Discord was like going crazy or something, because I think that's more of an active kind of place where people talk.
Mm-hmm. I actually spoke to somebody. It was my kid's birthday, so we had guests over and we were talking about it, and they were like, I don't even have social media because this is reality. We're standing here, we're having a conversation. Maybe we differ in opinion, but we're actually people just talking to each other. And if you were out there like wearing a sign that said something crazy, we would come over and be like, Destin, are you okay? And that's the world we live in. And then online, it's like you said, people can be very loud. And I think it's your show, really, not mine, but to give my 2 cents on it, I do think that obviously everybody is entitled to opinion and it's important, but I agree with you completely on the fact that the gamer sphere, it does account for a smaller percentage than you realize, because we're hyper in tune with everything that's going on in the gaming industry for the most part. And most people just go to Walmart, whatever. They're like, oh, that looks cool, I'll check that out. And that's a lot of the people that play games, or they just play their Call of Duty every year.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think most people, most gamers just don't have any interest in engaging in kind of online discussion about games. Maybe they have got like a private Discord with their friends or something, but I think Twitter really is kind of the minority in terms of the gamer voice. And, often you'll hear people say like, everyone hates this or everyone loves this. And, as a games company, all you can do is shake your head and go, I mean, there's just no data to support that kind of opinion whatsoever. But yeah, like you said, people can have their opinions and that's fine. We don't really care where you kind of fall in that argument, but it is a shame that, I think people take it a bit too seriously sometimes.
Yeah. I guess I'll call you a double A now that you've had a huge success.
Yeah, maybe.
What are your biggest challenges now?
Scaling still causes us challenges. We struggle a bit with kind of planning what to do next. We've always had a way that we plan our updates, but now we kind of need to change them to be more suitable to the size of the audience. We need to be a bit more consistent, which is new for us. Other challenges, going to gaming events is a challenge. It's tiring and it's hard to do. But definitely, I think number one for us is just scaling. We struggle since day one, and a year later, we still struggle with just adding more people to the team, improving workflows, making things run smoother. It's a real kind of learning curve for us.
You did go to a gaming event recently, and you got to meet one of my favorite developers out there, Sean Murray. Hello Games is making No Man's Sky. They just had a big update, and they're also working on it's Light No Fire, right?
Light No Fire.
Yeah, both those games are phenomenal. What was it like meeting Sean?
Yeah, it was pretty surreal, to be honest. I saw him. Everyone stays at that same hotel for the Game Awards, and I saw him in the morning at breakfast, and we were there, and I was like, "Guys, that's Sean Murray," and everyone was like, "Just leave him alone. Don't be weird." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then we had that bit of a tweet exchange, and that's how we kind of got to meet. Genuinely one of the nicest guys I've ever had the pleasure of meeting in gaming. And I was surprised how much he knew about Palworld. People always say, especially in like the gaming industry, "Oh, I love Palworld. It's the best. You guys are amazing." And, they played like 1 hour. But Sean he really knew his stuff. So I was kind of blown away.
That's cool. Sean is incredibly nice and quiet. Came off reserve when I had the opportunity to meet him. And yeah, definitely one of my favorites in the business. I'm so happy for their success and for your success too.
Thank you.
Have a few questions from patrons here. Now, if you can't,
sure.
Obviously they understand. If you can't answer them, that's fine. But here's what they asked. Would love to hear about the creative process Pocketpair took to arrive at this product and how the team used inspiration from older games to build something new on a familiar platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Pocketpair, even though we don't really kind of pigeonhole ourselves in making a certain genre of game, the kind of common thread between all our games is automation. We love automation games, Satisfactory, Factorio, these kind of games. And when we were doing Craftopia has a pet system, but it's not very fleshed out. There was kind of an inkling that fleshing that out could make something a really kind of unique survival game. So the idea for Palworld just came about on fleshing out a pet monster system, adding more automation elements, and kind of ramping up that survival kind of element. And those three things, when they came together, just kind of made something fun. And that's really all we do. We just try to make something that we enjoy playing.
Well, it seems like you nailed it with the last one.
Yeah.
How do you envision the growth and roadmap over the next year or two?
Over the next year or two, again, like I said, 1.0 is kind of everyone's eye is on 1.0. Last year, we did a lot of kind of big content updates. Whereas this year, we will still do content. We will still add content. Please relax, Discord. I can already hear you shouting at me. We will add more content, but bigger focus this year is going to be on those kind of mechanical, the cross-play, the PAL server transfers, those kind of things, because they will ultimately help with the longevity of the game and make a lot more kind of fans happy to play.
If you were ever given the opportunity, would you ever consider bringing Palworld to any up-and-coming handheld devices?
Yeah, absolutely. We would put Palworld anywhere. We'd put it on your smart fridge if we could. We have no kind of qualms about that.
Is there a roadmap to improving playability on Steam Deck as well as any of the other handhelds like ROG Ally and such?
On Steam Deck, yeah, Palworld runs on Steam Deck pretty well. I mean, we're always doing optimizations, but it already runs pretty well at the moment. But yeah, the team will continue to kind of optimize all kind of versions of the game.
Why were you... So it seemed like it was all the emails, but maybe there's more to it. What inspired Pocketpair to pursue publishing with external developers, and what qualifiers do you seek in a partnership when it comes to developers looking to have their game published? Like, what are you looking for?
Right. Yeah. We're looking to help people who kind of genuinely need help and genuinely have a good idea. We're looking at indies. We're looking at kind of bigger indies. We're not too interested in helping out like the big boys. We're not interested in, crypto games, NFT games, no interest. We just want to help people who are maybe struggling a bit. People who maybe couldn't find their audience, or maybe people who kind of like failed at their first attempt, that kind of thing. Because so often in this industry, people don't fail because of their own kind of fault. They just fail because there's, 10,000 games released last year, and it's a real kind of battle for attention. So we just want to help as many games as possible get made, because so few games kind of get the funding they deserve anymore. Qualifiers, we have nothing on our website. We just kind of say email us. We're open. We're open to pretty much any pitch at the moment, if the idea is fun and if the team really, really kind of love what they're building.
That's great to hear. I don't have any other questions for you, but do you have any other thoughts about Palworld or just the crazy journey you've been on in the last year? You just celebrated about 1 year since early access launch of Palworld.
Yeah. Palworld will continue to grow. It's only going to get bigger. It's definitely not going anywhere. Palworld has kind of become this machine that's, I think, and of course I'm biased, but I think it's going to become quite unstoppable in the near future. I think the only thing I would say is we're definitely not as devious as people might think. Things are definitely not as dramatic as people might think. It's quite chill. It's quite relaxed. Everyone's quite friendly in the Palworld kind of greater sphere. We're just going to keep doing what we do. We're just going to keep making fun games, making goofy games, and hopefully our fans will continue to enjoy them.
To me, that sounds like a completely solid plan, and I can't wait to see what you come up with next.
Thank you.
Bucky, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Destin. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. If you want to support this channel, you can do so very easily by hitting that subscribe button, hitting that bell, or hitting that like button when content goes live. But a very special shout out to the patron members who support at the highest tier: Christopher Eddy, Inner Machine, Phil Roney, Savage 03, Spingetter 889, and the Scarecrow 121. There are a ton of supporters for this channel. Thank you, everyone. If you want to see some of my other work, be sure to check out my Assassin's Creed Shadows preview, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now. Real quick, we were talking off the air, and you brought up Nintendo. I didn't ask any questions because you can't talk about it, right?
Correct. I cannot talk anything about it.
Cool.
That's it.
All right.